if you can explain that to me, and because I don't know what these terms actually mean in a virtual, context, and if you can explain that for me, please, sir. Dr. Bauer, I was inclined to think of all of your approach as some kind of Husserlian phenomenological approach. Am I right to think that? And does that mean that that you think technology is totally human-driven, so to speak, and there's not there is no technological impetus that goes beyond this phenomenological approach? That's my question.
دكتور علي، مع حضرتك دكتورة ثريا البدوي من كلية الإعلام جامعة القاهرة وكلية الاتصال جامعة الشارقة. سؤالي عن الوجود الاجتماعي في المجتمع الافتراضي موجه للأستاذ الدكتور أحمد العموش. أحب أعرف من دكتور أحمد العموش كيف يمكن الفصل بين النيو ميديا والتراديشنال ميديا على مستوى المشاعر والأحاسيس. يعني معروف في العلوم الإحصائية أو في العلوم الاجتماعية إن احنا بنستخدم مقاييس معينة لقياس الاتجاهات أو قياس المشاعر والأحاسيس، فكيف يمكن من خلال هذه الدراسة توجيه أسئلة ذات بدائل واختيارات محددة والوصول بعد كده هو لنتائج تشعرنا بأن الطالب أو الشاب الجامعي لديه قدرة على الشعور بالاستقلالية أو بالأمان. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا. أعتقد الآن نعود إلى الباحثين ونبدأ بالدكتور جان سيرفياس ومن ثم الدكتور توماس ومن ثم الدكتور أحمد. دكتور جان.
Okay, thank you. I basically got two or three questions, I would say. One is the issue of power. If my understanding of the question is correct, then you expressed some concerns or some doubts about the impact an alternative model could have for the power situation, right? I think that it's a fair kind of statement. If we look at the reality of every day, it's definitely not an environment where we are, so to speak, living in a more equal and more participatory society, democratic society. So there is still a long way to go, but when you look at it from a more theoretical perspective, you can of course distinguish between the different philosophies and approaches which are available from a more alternative power or empowerment kind of perspective. And you will also see that the attention paid to civil society and issues related to civil society, the focus on the so-called new social movements is definitely an element, an example which has upgraded, so to speak, the discussions on power and the possibility of power or the potential of power. Now, whatever we agree or not agree on, I think it's important to acknowledge that this is one of the crucial but also one of the more complex issues which social scientists haven't come to grips with as of yet. So we can only learn more about this by either going back to the basics and test and question those who are philosophing and researching at a more at those more theoretical and philosophical levels, or looking at what's happening in reality and see glimpses, elements which could be identified as potential avenues for and lines of exploration for what you could call empowerment and participation. Now, one example I'd like to take, in which I've been involved myself, is, as you probably all know, the so-called two-stage World Summit on the Information Society. It was an UN-based kind of exercise hosted by or coordinated by the ITU One part took place in Geneva, the last wing, the last part in Tunis. And of course, if you read the declaration and what was the outcome of this discussion, it's a lot of, much of the same, so to speak. A lot of the recommendations made were not mind-boggling, but there were openings created, elements which slipped into the discussion, which opened, so to speak, a space for new ways of looking at these issues. It was also the first major global conference which allowed the so-called civil society, the NGOs, and not officially represented organizations, to have sit at the same level as the private and the public authorities were. And it had the potential, I'm not saying it had as a result, but the potential, and it's definitely going to be explored further in the new configurations at other conferences. It had the potential to bring all of us involved in these debates to the table at the more democratic, at the more equal level. And that, of course, is a process. That's not an end product in itself. The end product may not be there where we would like it to be, but the process to reach that kind of end is equally important, in my opinion. So without saying we have moved a substantial way away from the more traditional perspectives, there is definitely a lot of experimenting going on, both in theory as well as in everyday practice. And I used the example at an international level, but there are definitely more examples to be given at the local levels. And one of the fair critiques at those local levels is definitely also the one which says participatory models are only good at analyzing localized community level kind of exercises, but they can't reach, can't be upscaled to a more national level. I tend to question that, and in particular cases, I think there are enough good arguments to see the results also at national levels. But okay, as I highlighted in my paper, it needs all the factors, all the contextual elements to be taken into consideration as well. The question about interdisciplinarity, in a very straightforward way, I think that anthropology is one of the